Thank you very much, I'm not sure whether 15 minutes will do justice to what I would like to really say, but I'd like to start with some real stories, and then I'll go to what I have to say here. The first story relates to an experience in the mid-1970s when I was I think we just came back from what we refer to as Olaha, and I think I was in 9th grade. And so the experience really related to, at the time we came back from the Somali language campaign. And so when we came back, I was young and growing then, and I was really interested in sports. So I became very interested in basketball. So there was an orientation. I was born in Beto, and there's an orientation. It's called the PRO, Public Relations Office. You know, some of you know that. And so the orientation is where the Siad Barre's regime tried to inculcate the people about scientific socialism. And also, in my own case, I was interested because it also has a basketball court. And that is what I was interested in. Every night, when around 7 o'clock, I can see the basketball lights. Just 2 years before that, we had installed, or the government installed, some high beam basketball lights, and so we could play basketball at night. And I could see from home, and the walk between home and the orientation was very exciting because I was looking forward whenever I see on the lights. It was either an orientation function or some of my colleagues convinced the orientation people that we could play basketball that night. Hopefully tonight I thought it would be basketball, but it was not. When I came, there was a colleague of mine, who was in high school then. He was one of those students who also became fascinated by the government's propaganda and scientific socialism. So he was sort of an educated whether in that sense. And in front of him were about 20 or 30 mothers, relatively uneducated mothers. And tonight he was saying, in Somali, wal is ambarena our, meaning we will stigmatize people. He was actually trying to stigmatize and calling names to mothers relatively uneducated who did not participate in the self-help scheme today, in the self-help, so who did not come to the self-help today. So these are relatively uneducated mothers, and this young 9th, 10th grade student was actually a colleague of mine, was shouting out of his lungs and saying, "What is Ambarena? What is Ambarena?" And so, Father Hassan Adam, what Ambarena? So now I thought that was just quite fascinating, and I want to relate that idea to the notion in which the Somali society, in its ideology, from the first government to Siad Barre today, has used certain kinds of national narratives that are assumed to be sort of a holy scripture or muqaddas, and therefore, if anybody deviates from that idea, the notion is simply that that person is stigmatized or can be simply in that sense. So if I deviate, I'm asking you not to ambare me notion. So with that forward, I attended a conference. Actually, I was in Columbus, Ohio, a year ago actually, when the Ethiopian regime invaded Somalia. It was a Sunday, I think, December 25, and I went to a coffee shop in Columbus, Ohio that morning, and I saw an interesting event where the entire people that came into the coffee shop were divided into one group that were celebrating and another group that was very sad. right? And some of you who are old enough have seen the O.J. Simpson trial in the 1990s, where you saw two pictures, one white population totally sad, and another black population celebrating. A picture in which two groups see one reality in two different ways. You wonder how did that occur? Now, well, so these happens many times. A gathering is either characterized as Somalia dowladda ku yidhan jiray. Another gathering is kuwii dowladda kasoo horjeeda. It's just like that. Those with the government, those against the government. So, with that forward then, and I don't have much time, I want to just read quick few things and come back to here. So in that sense, the conventional Somali historiography is derived from the assumption that the society has been and remains as a nation sui generis, a priori, if you will, or what Somalis call muqaddas, holy nation. The most revealing expression of this sentiment is found in my good friend's work, actually, Saeed Samatar, 1987, is titled Somalia, a Nation in Search of a State. The assumption is simply that Somalia is a priori a muqaddas nation. The only thing that's left is a problem of the state parameters in that sense. The title, as it were, represents a long line of research that depicts the society as a seamless, homogeneous entity, downplays and sometimes violently oppresses any mention of social and political fault lines. The only acknowledged political and social fault line, according to the Nation in Search of a State thesis, are those that resulted from Faragelin Shishay. Any fault line that's acknowledged is that of Faragelin Shishay. Faragelin Shishay is a code word for anything that you wish. That, except it devotes the Somali people from human agents. In this sense, the Somali people do not have any agency in what they do. Everything that happens is simply as a result of Faragelin Shishay. It could be European or otherwise. Now, for the methodologically and theoretically informed scholar, however, locating the social fault lines of the nation on Faragelin Shishay or foreign intervention or individual dictators, in this case, Siad Barre, right? Only, just Siad Barre, alone is to paraphrase a number of interesting scholars. Some of my friends, which is shouting the wolf, when the predator is in fact not the wolf, but one of the sheep itself. This kind of historiography is moreover analogous to the tale of the African peasant who was stopped by a traveler in a larger car and asked the way to the city, who responded, after reflecting on the matter a while, if I were you, I wouldn't start from here. Somali historiography, in other words, it starts from where the African peasant warns against by concentrating only on one foreign intervention or another, or a particular dictatorship or a single individual. The point is not to dismiss the effects of colonialism or post-colonial regimes on the traditional structures of Somali society, or any of the other colonizing people for that matter. However, we suggest that conceptualizing the idea of Somaliness in terms of mere interactions between colonial overlords and undifferentiated local masses may not be sufficient cause to have totally disturbed the Somali social tradition, the Somali traditional tree under which it is pleasant shadow all social and legal problems were amicably resolved. What I'm really trying to suggest is that, of course, I'm not undermining the suggestion that there is a global geopolitical interest, regional and global in this sense. But however, scholarship, true scholarship asks us that we have to truly concentrate on human agency as well. We have to look at what are the social, political, and economic actions that the people themselves engage in that contributes to this. Now, I want to move to this then, to suggest the idea of the multiple and contested identities. The argument is that Somalia is not necessarily this undifferentiated masses, but rather a society that contains multiple voices in this sense. What I want to do is, if you show me when 5 minutes is left, give me a sign.